Hello YouTube folks, welcome to my channel. My name is Steph and today we are talking about two books by an author, new books that I'm so excited about. You have to read it and I'm going to tell you why today. Yes, I am standing. My cat is currently sleeping in the chair that I usually sit in for these videos, so here I am standing in my fuzzy socks. So the books I want to talk about today are called Hell Followed With Us and The Spirit Bares Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White. I have a couple of notes here that I'm going to read. Little background on Andrew Joseph White. He is a trans autistic author from Virginia, where he grew up falling in love with monsters and wishing he could be one too. He received his MFA in creative writing from George Mason University in 2012, and he has a habit of cuddling random street cats. Andrew is the author of several best-selling novels about queer and disabled rage, and he likes to write about trans kids with claws and fangs and what happens when they bite back. So if that doesn't paint you a really clear picture of what these books are kind of about, they're super queer, they have romance in them that is definitely a subplot, but there and so good. They are terrifying and horror, lots of body horror, tons of discussions of autism and navigating a neurotypical world made for neurotypical people while being autistic, having stims, having things that kind of make you look strange, in addition to being trans. This author loves to tell stories about exactly the life he knows, exactly the perspective he knows, which is being autistic and trans and just feeling so strange in this world that is not necessarily built for or safe or punishing of bad behavior against trans and autistic people. So Hell Followed With Us, it was published in 2022. It has a 4.15 average star rating on Goodreads, and I gave this 5 stars. Here's the Goodreads synopsis. 16-year-old trans boy Benji is on the run from the cult that raised him, the fundamentalist sect that unleashed Armageddon and decimated the world's population. Some dystopian up in here, okay. Desperately, he searches for a place where the cult can't get their hands on him, or more importantly, on the bioweapon they infected him with. But when cornered by monsters born from the destruction, Benji is rescued by a group of teens from the local Aixon LGBTQ+ center, affectionately known as the ALC. The ALC's leader, Nick, is gorgeous, autistic, and a deadly shot, and he knows Benji's darkest secret. The cult's bioweapon is mutating him into a monster deadly enough to wipe humanity from the earth once and for all. Still, Nick offers Benji shelter among his ragtag group of queer teens, as long as Benji can control the monster and use its power to defend the ALC. Eager to belong, Benji accepts Nick's terms until he discovers the ALC's mysterious leader has a hidden agenda and more than a few secrets of his own. Ooh. A furious queer debut novel about embracing the monster within and unleashing its power against your oppressors. Perfect for fans of Gideon the Ninth and Annihilation. So, that's what Goodreads has to say about Hell Followed With Us. What I have to say about this book is it definitely has some flaws. You can tell this is a literary debut. Andrew Joseph White contributed to a couple other nonfiction works and a couple fiction works as well. Short stories and stuff you can kind of see on his Goodreads, those other works, but this is his first debut novel. It's a YA novel. Definitely has some awkward moments, some stretches, have to suspend your disbelief a couple of times, but it is so well crafted. There's lots of religious trauma implications because the cult that created this mutation, this virus, is a subsidiary of Christianity, some sort of evangelical group cult thing. And Benji, being trans, is obviously not very comfortable with the cult that refuses to acknowledge that he is a boy. And the idea that he escapes, this cult, he gets away in this really extreme and sad way, and a LGBTQ plus youth center survived and is living in the ALC, living in the center, learning how to shoot guns and cook food and survive and make trades with other groups, other, chunks of people that aren't part of the cult, the religious cult. I think it's such a great way to integrate queerness into story without it being like, and everyone was just queer, because, that's not always the case. In actual reality, in real life situations, you're not going to look in a room and every single person is going to be queer. So if you're trying to tell a queer story, it's really important to represent it authentically. And I think having it be a LGBTQ plus center that survives and stays together, they don't really have family, or they have family that doesn't accept them anyway, so why would they go back to try to survive with their family? I thought that was a really great way to have queer representation, strong, heavy implications of queer representation in a story without it being like, and everyone was queer. And it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense. You're kind of forcing that. It's not forced. And I loved that. I also, which I will touch on a little more later, I love how Andrew Joseph White parallels body horror and gender dysphoria. So this main character, Benji, in Hell Followed With Us, has a mutation in him. Like, he literally is changing physically, and it's looked down upon. It's weird. Some people praise it. Some people hate it. He doesn't want people to know. He looks in the mirror and he's terrified. I feel like is a excellent way to kind of metaphorically depict gender dysphoria, because trans people, of course, look in the mirror and they struggle. Some people are like, oh my god, yes, you look great, and it's like, maybe just treat me normal. And some people are like, why are you doing that? You're not actually that gender. You don't look right. You know what I'm saying? Like, to have it be a fictitious driving point, having body horror and gore be so central to this main character's story and the overall plot, and also have this character be trans, so it's like paralleling that. Excellent. So excellent. And it's, again, not shoved down your throat. It totally makes sense. It's a dystopian world with this horrible, disgusting virus, and this kid who, has this bioweapon in him is trans, and it just so happens to be that situation, and it's excellent. Sorry if I look weird. The sun is moving. I have so many windows in this room that it's like shifts. My shading is all over the place. Anyway, the second book, which I actually read first, it was one of the first books I read so far this year, 2024. His second book is called The Spirit Bears Its Teeth. This was written in 2023. New. It's very new. It has a 4.55 average star rating on Goodreads, and it has thousands and thousands of reviews. And I gave it 5 stars. This was my first 5-star of 2024. And it surprised me so much because I just saw the cover. The art is gorgeous, and I'll put it up here for you to see. The art is gorgeous, and I saw the cover and I was like, that looks fun. I didn't even know. I heard some people talk about Spirit Bears Its Teeth and how it was, a good YA novel, but I didn't realize just how incredible it was, which is why I had to make this video and talk about this author's books, because why is this not hyped more? For why? All right, let's get into the Goodreads synopsis. London, 1883. The veil between the living and dead has thinned. Violet-eyed mediums commune with the spirits under the watchful eye of the Royal Speaker Society, and 16-year-old Silas Bell would rather rip out his violet eyes than become an obedient speaker wife. According to Mother, he'll be married by the end of the year. It doesn't matter that he's needed a decade of tutors to hide his autism, that he practices surgery on slaughtered pigs, that he's a boy, not the girl the world insists on seeing. After a failed attempt to escape an arranged marriage, Silas is diagnosed with veil sickness, a mysterious disease sending violet-eyed women into madness, and shipped away to Braxton's sanatorium and finishing school. The facility is cold, the instructors merciless, and the students either bloom into eligible wives or disappear. Ooh. So when the ghosts of missing students start begging Silas for help, he decides to reach into Braxton's innards and expose its rotten guts to the world, as long as the school doesn't break him first. Okay, I feel like that doesn't even do justice to the story. I feel like Goodreads could have done better. Goodreads could have done better. This kid, Silas, this world, people are born with purple eyes. You're neither like, it's sometimes breedable, right? Like genetics. Sometimes it's not. It just like pops up in the family. And men who have violet eyes are heavily endorsed, heavily sponsored. They are praised. They have all these fancy jobs and titles, and they get all this money from the, whatever it's called, Royal Speaker Society. Good thing I wrote it down. And women, because sexism, the ones who are born with purple eyes are really just used to be bred. They're really just used or to be married. So like if a guy doesn't have purple eyes and he's got all this money and he wants to be a part of the cool cats club, he'll marry a woman with violet eyes so that maybe his kids will have it. It's an entryway into the society, so forth. But women who use the power, which is technically like illegal, right? It's not okay. Women are too hysterical and can't control their emotions, right? So they can't use the veil powers, the violet eye powers. So women who do use the powers, women who don't obey the Royal Speaker Society get sent away to whatever, they get punished and diagnosed with veil sickness, which is like a parallel to hysteria, right, from this time period. Women who spoke out of turn were hysterical. Silas, you know, everyone looks at Silas like he is a woman because that was the gender assigned to him at birth, and it's like, you can't use your magic, you have to be married, and all these dudes want to marry him, and he's like, oh, this isn't for me. He is also autistic, which obviously like isn't really a thing in the 1880s, especially in this story. So it's like constant masking, constant discussions about him trying to like navigate situations and like doing that thing where he's like, okay, this person just made this face, which means this, so I have to respond like this. There's a lot of that. And also is so freaking smart. Like, this guy is so interested in science and biology and wants to be a surgeon. So like more of that kind of gory discussion, right? And his older brother is like the only person who affirms his gender, calls him by his chosen name, Silas. He is going to school to be a surgeon, so he like comes home and teaches Silas everything he knows. Really interesting dynamic that kind of goes on throughout the book. Silas impersonates a man that already was going to be indoctrinated into the Royal Speaker Society, doesn't get away with it, gets sent to this basically insane asylum for young girls with purple eyes who still have a chance, right? And stuff goes down, y'all. There is a cute romance with a trans woman. There is a lot of interesting discussions of how girls will survive in a world not made for them, and how trans men are kind of a part of that, and how they navigate the very different path but very squished into the same category path. There's magic because there's like ghosts and some really scary stuff. And then the ending, I like want to say it's so bad, but I won't. This is a no spoiler zone today, y'all. But let's just say some people do get what they deserve in the end. Some people do the revenge, and you know, it's a good for him. It's a good for him. Cannot recommend that book enough. You can definitely see how Andrew Joseph White has improved in his writing skills between Hell Followed With Us and Spirit Bears Its Teeth. Both are excellent still, but Spirit Bears Its Teeth is just so much more concrete and like so much more clear, the kind of picture that's being painted, you know, the kind of gothic asylum and the way that Silas's transness and autism is kind of navigated. It's a lot cleaner in a way that I feel like is honestly superior to most literature I've read when it comes to an author's second work. I wrote a couple notes, so I'm going to be looking down again, but I kind of want to discuss how important it is to have diversity in books without it being ingenuine and oversaturated. So first, of course, the author is trans and autistic, so not that it's required to identify with the diverse story that you want to tell or are trying to tell, but it does add a level of intimacy with the perspective that otherwise is absent. It's so important to do your research if you don't represent a certain demographic in a book, especially when so many stigma are attached to that demographic. For example, like, I'm a white queer woman, and if I try to write a story about a Latinx family, if I don't do serious research, literally like on the ground, in the books, everything I can, watching other media by Latinx stories, if I don't do that research, that is inauthentic, and that is pretty not okay in my opinion. It's like all those movies, right, where they're directed by men and written by men, and these women are just like, yeah, you can step all over me, I still love you because you have a lot of money. And it's like, women aren't really like that. You know, that's not really, like, if you stepped all over a woman in real life, most likely she's gonna tear the house down. You know what I'm saying? It's like all those stories where it's like, ugh, you know, because that's misrepresentation, because that is an inauthentic message, an authentic way to tell that story. You have to do serious research. If you're going to discuss a demographic of people that you do not have any knowledge or experience in, and that has historically struggled with discrimination and biases and oppression, it's so important. Otherwise, you're just feeding into that discrimination and those stereotypes. You're just feeding into the society that tells a certain story, paints a certain picture about that demographic. You have to do your research, or just write about your own experiences. For example, again, I'm a queer white woman, so if I wanted to write a book, it would be perfectly authentic and wonderful for me to write a story about a queer white woman. I kind of touched on this earlier, but also I think it's such an excellent literary device that Andrew Joseph White loves, which is to integrate horror, body horror, and gore with the experience of struggling with body dysphoria and neurodiversity, to externalize the internal horror of being different and being treated different in a fictitious way. So cool. I think it's so cool. And, you know, maybe I'm like overinterpreting this, and Andrew Joseph White just really likes horror. Maybe he just really likes the spooky, gross, gory stuff that kind of makes you nauseous when you're reading. That's fine. But for me, I definitely interpret it as a literary device to show non-trans and neurodiverse people what it's like to be uncomfortable with something that somebody else has to live with every single day. Another really cool thing about these books is, though these stories are diverse and provide different perspectives than traditional stories, it isn't performative or trying to be diverse. It's a good intention to want to be diverse and cover every base, but if stretched too thin, not concretely researched, and done only to be able to advertise the work as diverse in every way, becomes inauthentic and bad representation. So Andrew Joseph White covers a lot of bases when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, there's discussions with being queer, sexism, there's discussions with, you know, autism and neurodiversity and all those kinds of different shades of people. And I've definitely seen work and read work where somebody wanted to tick off every single box, like, I have a black character, and I have a queer character, and I have a disabled character, and I have a this, and it's like every single thing gets covered. And while the intention is good to be diverse and have everyone represented, it's not necessarily authentic, because again, it's that research thing. If you do your research, or you are a part of those communities, or you have a team that's all, a part of those communities and they contribute to the work, then I think, of course, it can work. But the intention is wrong when the intention is to be able to show the world that your work is for everyone, because that's inauthentic. That's not real representation. That means you didn't do your research. Like, you can't create something just to say that you created something diverse. That can't be the intention. Authentic storytelling should be the intention. And if you just want to be able to check every box and cover every basis, then it can be cringe, especially for people in those communities who are watching. It's like why? It feels like it's 3 books or 3 movies or 3 whatevers in one. That should have been 3. An example that may be a little niche. I saw Jagged Little Pill the musical in Boston when it first was a thing before COVID a few years ago. And I love Alanis Morissette, so I was like super excited to go. And me and my dad went, and afterwards we were kind of like, I get what they're trying to do and what they're trying to say, but because they tried to say so many different things, nothing ever felt deep, nothing ever felt like fully explored in an interesting or new way, because it just kept flip-flopping everywhere between different important topics. And if it had just stuck with like 2, maybe 3 instead of like 17, it was like every song was a different political statement, and that's wonderful intention-wise if maybe you're doing like a 4-piece musical, but for a hour and 45-minute musical, it just isn't enough to be authentic. You can't do enough in that amount of time. You know what I'm saying? I hope I said that okay. I hope I said that right. You know what I mean. Again, you can tell that Andrew Joseph White improved, and between Hell Followed With Us and Spirit Bears Its Teeth, they're both excellent. He has a degree in writing, so he knows what he's doing, but I'm just saying, if you read Spirit Bears Its Teeth and then Hell Followed With Us like I did, allow yourself to suspend your disbelief a little bit with Hell Followed With Us, because it's not as clean as The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, but it's just as good. Please check for trigger warnings. I probably should have said this sooner. Lots of really difficult topics. These are horror books, so it's the things that we struggle with, right? That's what horror is all about. Lots of death, ghosts, gore, transphobia, homophobia, sexism, all that stuff. Lots. Just check your trigger warnings. I'm not going to sit here and be like, if you're queer, you have to read this book. It covers queer topics. If it interests you, definitely read it. But please be careful with yourself, and be careful when it comes to books that cover such difficult topics. Having said that though, if you like horror, LGBTQ topics, diversity, dystopian, fantasy, cults, romance, gaggles of kids causing trouble, you have to read these books. You have to, please. I've been recording for 26 minutes and 50 seconds, please. Please read these books. They're so good, and they're not hyped enough. And Andrew Joseph White has another book coming out. Let me see when it is. September 3rd, 2024 is the date on Goodreads. It's called Compound Fracture. It's his first adult fiction, supposedly. And as of right now, it has a 5-star average on Goodreads with 20 reviews. So that's pretty cool. All right, y'all. The sun is leaving, and so am I. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you want to do. I am not your mother. Please consider picking up Hell Followed With Us or The Spirit Bears Its Teeth. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!